Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Casey Darling-Niffen. I'm the Conservation Policy Director with the Florida Wildlife Federation. Our mission is to safeguard Florida's water, wildlife, and wild spaces by taking action today to prevent irreversible loss tomorrow. We so appreciate you being with us tonight. We hope these live streams will bring people closer to our work statewide. Today's live stream will focus on reuniting the Great Florida Riverway, and that will be by restoring the natural flow of the Silver Springs, the Ocklawaha, and the St. Johns rivers. We have some awesome panelists with us tonight. We so appreciate them making the time to be here with us and all of you. Want to first introduce Lisa Rinaman. Lisa, as the St. Johns Riverkeeper, serves as Chief Advocate and the public's voice for the St. Johns River. We also have joining us Ryan Worthington. Ryan's a naturalist and eco-activist and produces the Florida Madcaps podcast, one of my favorites, highlighting recreation and conservation in Florida. And we also have Jessica Finch. Jessica is the former riverfront business owner and current mayor of Welaka, Florida. Jessica is keenly aware of the importance of rivers to the economy and water quality of life of the local community in Welaka. So we so appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much. Like I said, we're going to talk about reuniting the rivers and what that means. We're going to go over the history of the Ocklawaha River and the Rodman Dam. We're going to go over the current challenges that ecosystem is facing. And then we're going to talk about the benefits of restoration. Throughout our conversation, if you have questions that pop up, please put them in the chat. We're going to have some time at the end to answer some audience questions. And again, we just appreciate you being here and can't wait to talk more about reuniting the rivers. So let's jump in. Ryan, can you share a little bit about the Ocklawaha River, this part of Florida, from your personal experience recreating?
Oh, yeah, definitely. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time in the Ocklawaha. Which really impacted me was where I saw the Silver River, which is a clear spring run as it enters into the Ocklawaha, and you just have that contrast of the more tannic water and that clear coming together. But yeah, a lot of rope swings, a lot of swimming in it. As I got older, did more paddling, and one thing that I love about the Ocklawaha is it has like a wide floodplain around it, so much of it is not developed. And you really get a sense of that old Florida feeling while you're on it, and it's just beautiful. And I have spent a little bit more time in the Rodman Reservoir area lately, and that has, it has this beautiful lake look, and I can understand why some folks would want to preserve that. But if you look at, I've noticed that I've had a hard time launching at the boat ramps because of all the weeds. And also you have to be careful, especially if you're in motorized watercraft, because there's submerged logs and trunks that are very close to the surface, which impacts a good time unless you're going really slow or you're paddling. But overall, it's just absolutely beautiful, and it gives you a true sense of being in old Florida when you're on it.
I can't agree more. It was really enlightening seeing that whole area for me, especially as someone growing up in South Florida. Lisa, can you share a little bit about the history around the origin of the Rodman Dam? How did we get into this situation?
Yeah, and so thank you for having us. This is a great conversation, and thank everyone for joining us. For decades, there was conversation about building a canal across the state of Florida, similar to the Panama Canal. And it was, there were conversations about it being an economic driver as well as being good for our defense. And so for decades, looking at trying to make this happen. And so in the 60s, they did begin the building of the Cross Florida Barge Canal. But fortunately, it was luckily halted because of the significant environmental damage threatening our springs, our drinking water, our agriculture in Central Florida, as well as it was a huge boondoggle. So it was stopped in 1972 by President Nixon.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit why was that project stopped? Like, what halted that project?
Yeah, it was really a perfect example of many people coming together, from environmentalists that were very concerned about losing the springs. Marjorie Harris Carr was who, she was a Micanopy housewife that actually brought together good scientists. She was a scientist herself, but also advocates from the environmental side, but also the agricultural community, brought together lawyers to do good legal work, worked with politicians, and really kind of set the stage for really productive environmental work. And she was able to bring all of those stakeholders together to make sure that no additional destruction was done. Unfortunately, the Rodman Dam was already in place and still remains today.
Thank you. It's such an important part of the story that while the entire project was halted, that there are these remnants that remain. How's that dam shaped the river's ecosystems? How has that shaped that area for the past 50 years since it was built?
Yeah, so I mean, there was immediate damage. Of course, there's 20 springs that were drowned underneath the reservoir. In fact, there was a huge article in Field and Stream magazine saying goodbye to Blue Springs, which is a world-renowned bass fishery that is no longer, it's there, but it's drowned out. You can actually see it if there's a drawdown. And so you lose 20 springs that can't flow because they're suppressed. There's 7,200 acres of, 7,800 acres of forested wetlands. Here's a photograph of it during the drawdown. All of these trees were lost, and all the benefits of those trees, but also this important forested wetlands, the best biofilters a river can have, and it's important floodplain. And so we're losing all the flood protection of this forested wetland area and floodplain because it's drowned under the current conditions of a full reservoir out there. And then also was lost all of that wonderful water that really was critical to balancing the salt freshwater balance in the lower St. Johns River. And then to make matters worse, it also severed the natural migratory pattern of historic fish that used to be in abundance, like American eel, American shad, striped bass. These were economic drivers in the lower St. Johns, the lower Ocklawaha. And unfortunately, once that natural biological pathway was severed, these fisheries has almost disappeared. But good news is they can come back.
That certainly is good news, and thank you for sharing that, Lisa. It's just astounding seeing those stumps. Like Ryan was saying, you have to really be careful when the water levels are elevated in the pool, because that's what's underneath. So it really, those photos drive that home so much. Jessica, this next question's for you. This is a high hazard dam. What risks does this dam pose to the town of Welaka?
Well, honestly, it's come to my attention in the recent years since I've served on council and now as mayor. But Welaka, we're the first town that sits at the mouth of the river. But it's, to me, the dam for our residents, it's out of sight, out of mind. They're not really considering the potential for a dam failure or anything like that. So I just wanted to relay a story because this story has made such an impact on me, and it has really driven the point home of the safety issue that the dam creates for our town. And we would be the first. We're at ground zero. But it was about a little over a year ago, and I received a phone call from our mayor at the time. So I was vice mayor, and it was after 10, and I was in bed, and my phone was on silent, but I saw it was him. And I thought, well, I'm not going to answer. If it's important, he'll call back or he'll text me. So he did text me. He said, please call me right away. So I went into the living room and made a phone call, and I said, what's going on? He said, there's a bomber sitting on top of the dam right now. And I'm going to need all boots on the ground in Welaka to help evacuate our citizens. I said, what are you talking about? I mean, I knew the dam was there. And I knew that we sat at the base, but it seems to me like a pretty good distance. But he said, no, we've got less than 2 hours to get the residents out of Sportsman's Harbor, which is also called Stevens Point, and Beecher's Point. He said, so I've already called the police chief. I've called our fire chief. Now I'm calling you. He said, if I call you back, that means we got to go. If I don't call you back and I text you, it means they've gotten the situation under control. So, of course, it was a restless night for me, not knowing what was going on. But at 3 a.m., he finally texted me and said that they had gotten the bomber into custody and that it was no longer a risk. But it really opened my eyes up at that point to the potential of the damage if there were to be a failure of that dam, whether by something like that or by just the dam failing, because it is old. It is pretty much, as far as I know, not as maintained as it should be. And additionally, I found out after that in fact, it was not less than 2 hours, it was less than an hour. And when we reached out to our sheriff's department, who is actually the emergency contact for that, so he's listed on the emergency action plan as the emergency contact, he said, well, we wouldn't be down there. If there was a problem on this end, we would be up here dealing with that. We couldn't help you. So it opened my eyes up to the fact that this is a serious threat to our town. The residents mostly are not aware of the situation. These are low-lying areas already. And I have seen, or I have heard studies that there would be potentially 500 plus properties affected. So these might not all be homes, but even at, 1/2 of that having a home, that's still way too much risk for our town. And so the dam itself is an unnatural barrier holding all this water back. It is actually what creates our flood risk. We have natural flood risk because there's low-lying areas, but to this potential, the dam is what creates the danger.
Wow. That is serious. And I got chills when you told that story, because I'm just imagining myself, in the middle of the night trying to evacuate my family, not knowing what's going on. And that is really a frightening situation. And as the mayor now, I'm sure that I know that night you didn't rest easy. I'm sure it's on your mind a lot of nights, especially as we have increasingly unpredictable weather and extreme weather events. I know that's, I'm sure that weighs heavy. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing the risks.
Yeah. And every storm that we have now been increasingly seeming to get, I found out that they are releasing water from the dam prior to these storms. They know that they're coming, so they don't want the added water and the weight behind the dam. So every storm that comes through, I'm taking a deep breath and trying to get through it, because we just don't know what's going to happen or what could happen. We had about 15 inches of rain during Milton. I did send over some photos of some of the flooding from Milton in Sportsman's Harbor. This is just during, this also happened during Ian and Nicole. And so it's a continual thing that we're fighting against. And we have heard that if the dam were to be breached somehow during an event like this, we would have at least 8 feet of water, or potentially 8 feet of water on top of this. And you can see already the devastation that is there in those pictures. And you can imagine what 8 more feet of water could do.
Yeah, that would be catastrophic. Absolutely. Well, I will say that the residents of Welaka are lucky to have you at the helm, and I know that that you are doing all that you can to make sure that they are safe, and this issue is taken care of in the best possible way. So thank you for all of your work, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
Lisa, so I think we can all kind of imagine what some of the impacts of restoration could be, given that major safety risk for the residents of Welaka. But what are some of the restoration impacts on the local communities that you can kind of foresee once we have restoration going?
Sure. It really reinforces, all the wonderful things about Putnam County and Marion County. These are natural wonders, incredible places that, if you're lucky enough to visit them or grow up there or live there, it's a great place to be. So it reinforces and really restores and protects the Silver Springs, as well as the Ocklawaha, all the springs that are currently underneath the dam, and the St. Johns River. So it really fortifies the bass fishing capital of the world, which is the St. Johns River that put Putnam County on the map. And so it really focuses on bringing more recreational opportunities. The University of Florida did an economic study, and they anticipate there'll be an 81% increase in recreational visitation, because not only does it boost fishing opportunities, it also brings more different types of recreational activities. And so you may want to come do a spring run. You may want to come do more fishing on a lake, or you may want to do fishing on the river. It really brings back that fish habitat and restores it. But also with more visitation, you also get more economic activity, because everyone coming to visit the area, they're going to restaurants, they're going to get bait, they're going to do more things. And so the University of Florida also anticipates that there'll be a 1.76 return on investment. There'll be a 7.6% return. And so significant increase in economic opportunities. And that's just restoration alone. But part of the bigger piece is really working with the community to bring more access, bringing more opportunities for everyone visiting, but everyone living in the surrounding area to have more opportunities to experience these waterways once they're reunited.
It's so important. I mean, I know for me, access to recreation, access to outdoors and nature, and especially the water is what really improves quality of life in my area. It's what we love to do in our free time. So that's wonderful. And to have that economic boost, that's really incredible as well. I know if you're like me, just going there to see the restoration effort would be reason enough, just to see what it looks like when you have this major environmental restoration. So looking forward to.
Absolutely. There's a whole, tourism movement on going to see dams that are being breached or removed and bringing these natural habitats. There's huge ones out west that just brought the salmon population migrations back. And so it's sort of its own little specialized tourism. And so there's different types of boosts during restoration, watching the floodplain come back, watching the forest come back, and all the different wildlife that transition over those times. But then also, of course, downstream benefits in the lower St. Johns, and upstream benefits throughout the Ocklawaha as well as Silver Springs, and bringing manatees back, bringing manatees into Silver Springs at higher numbers. Right now, Blue Springs on the St. Johns gets hundreds of manatees, and their numbers, they make the most of their money in the park during manatee season. So just think about what that could do to Silver Springs. And there's also environmental benefits of having more manatees in Silver Springs that will help some of the issues up in that area too. So it's just kind of cascading, both from an economic, recreation, environmental, not to mention the important safety issues that Jessica mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. I'm already planning, like, I'm going to have to go back at the same time every year, take my photo, see how things are growing next to it. So, Ryan, can you share a little bit about the benefits that you would see in restoration? I know we all love recreating, and can you tell us a little bit about how you foresee restoration benefiting what you like to do?
Sure. And if you look at the Rodman Reservoir right now, it's kind of like a one-trick pony. It's known as a bass fishery, but what you don't see there is a swimming area. You don't see folks being able to water ski. You don't see any of those activities that we would be able to associate with such a large reservoir of that size. And I personally would not want to swim in it. I wouldn't say a swimming area is really a great idea, because FWC has to spray tens of thousands of dollars a year in herbicides into the reservoir to control vegetation. And that's something that Marjorie Harris Carr warned. She gave that warning when they were fighting the dam, back in the 50s and the 60s. So it was something that, right there. You can't launch a kayak from there. You can't launch a boat or anything. And I took both of those pictures. That's 3 days apart. If you look at how drastic that is, and that's all going into the water. It cannot be good for the wildlife. It can't be good for any recreators. So there's a lot of limitations on the Rodman Reservoir as we see it now. But there's, Lisa really touched on a lot of the benefits. You're going to see, I think fishing would definitely improve, because right now fishing is primarily located by boat in the reservoir or right at the dam in the spillway. That's where you're getting some of the migrating fish that can't go up any further are right there. And then any of the fish that are coming through the dam. It's so you could expand that access. And also when you allow fish to migrate, you're going to get a much greater diversity of fish up and down the Ocklawaha and in Silver Springs, because since they've put the dam in there, the native fish populations have decreased and invasive blue tilapia have increased drastically. So we would probably see a reversal of that. And of course, one thing I'd be excited about, manatee viewing. You would definitely see it in Silver Springs. Manatees are dying around the state from lack of food. Unfortunately, manatees will go into a spring, and if there's not a food source there, which there's plenty in Silver Springs, they will starve to death in the warm water rather than venture out into the cold and try and forage. So with those 20 springs that are submerged right now that would be available, you could probably take, I'd imagine, Cannon Spring and maybe one other and put in some manatee viewing areas. So you have a wide variety of recreational opportunities that would be available if restoration was allowed to occur. Right now, it's limited to just almost a single activity. But then once you diversify that, you really get a lot more of an economic benefit. But also, there's a wide variety of things to do. And I'm particularly excited about that. I'd love to see it happen in my lifetime.
I am super excited about restoration too. So excited, in fact, that I jumped right to restoration, and we really have to talk about what's going on the ground right now. So let's talk a little bit about the current conditions. I know we've addressed that this dam is a problem ecologically and even from a safety standpoint. So Lisa, can the dam be removed? Why is that? Why hasn't that happened yet? And can that happen? Is that feasible?
Yeah, and absolutely, there's no one advocating for the dam to be removed. In fact, the federal government and all the environmental agencies for the last 20 years have been advocating for it to be breached. And so it's a partial restoration. And what that means is that the earthen dam would stay in place, as well as the gates and all the facilities that are on the dam right now, the restrooms, the boat ramp on the lower Ocklawaha side. And the proposal is to breach it where the natural channel of the Ocklawaha River once flowed, to allow that fresh flow. And then, so what that provides is for this fantastic infrastructure of the remaining parts of the dam to really focus on building it as a destination. We've had many meetings working with people throughout Marion County as well as Putnam County, having images of what that could look like if the dam was reimagined. So not removing it, but really celebrating its history and focusing on the future and having these different viewing platforms so you could see the forested wetlands come back and the trees come back and all the wildlife, have more fishing opportunities. So if you don't have a boat, you can go and take your family there and fish on both sides of the dam with the free flowing river, but also that you have places to bring your boat. And so you can leave Welaka, you can come to the dam and you can have a lunch. You can go all the way to Silver Springs and see the springs. And so really celebrating that connectivity by not removing, but by breaching it just where the historic river channel is and allowing that natural connection to be restored. Because since it's been severed, it's not only damaging the Ocklawaha, it's damaging Silver Springs and the lower St. John's, and this reuniting will make all that come back. And so really focusing on reuniting it and reimagining the dam into a destination that will give something for everyone to come and see and celebrate our past as well as our future.
Wonderful. And can you tell us a little bit? So we've talked so much about reuniting the rivers, and we actually have a Reunite the Rivers coalition. Can you tell us about the Reunite the Rivers coalition, what they're working on, how we're moving towards restoration?
Absolutely. This conversation, back when the Cross Florida Barge Canal was stopped in the 70s, organizations started organizing to really celebrate bringing these springs back and bringing all of the opportunities right there at the dam back. And one of the things, so there's been organizations working towards freeing the Ocklawaha. But then we realized coming together and looking at this from a bigger scale, it's not just about freeing the Ocklawaha, it's about reuniting 4 different ecosystems. So the coalition that's come together under Reunite the Rivers is really focusing on changing the conversation about all of the connectivity from the Green Swamp all the way through the upper Ocklawaha, joining Silver Springs, as well as that connectivity to the lower St. John's, and bringing together people from all different parts of this huge watershed and focusing on what will be gained as opposed to what will be lost. But also understanding all the different stakeholders. We all have different connections to different pieces of this. Ryan's, he's been more focused on the Ocklawaha side and the springs. Of course, I've been more focused on the lower St. John's and all the downstream benefits, but really looking at it from a regional perspective about what it could be and trying to put together that conversation of not only reuniting the rivers, but investing in the local communities to make the most of what can happen when these rivers, that severance is restored and we can move forward on opening up all the benefits, both economically and environmentally.
Wonderful. So recently we've heard kind of back and forth about a drawdown. Can you tell us a little bit about, we saw a photo before and we mentioned this was during a drawdown. You could see all those cypress stumps protruding out of the water that are usually drowned by the pool. What is a drawdown? What does that mean? And what's the current status of this drawdown that was supposed to happen this season?
Yeah, so the Rodman reservoirs never function as a natural lake. From the very beginning, it had to be artificially managed, almost like a fishbowl, when you have to clean out a fishbowl to make sure that you have good water quality, you have good oxygen and all of those things. The Rodman has to be drawn down the recommendation is every 3 to 4 years to allow to clean it out. And sadly, whenever that happens, there's significant damage done to the lower St. John's River. There's a huge flush of phosphorus that comes out into the St. John's. It causes toxic blue-green algae blooms. It can hurt submerged grasses and also wildlife. It's toxic to humans. But also when they fill it back up, there's a huge saltwater intrusion, a saltwater bloom coming into the St. John's that does more damage to this critical fish habitat and submerged grasses, which have sadly disappeared in the lower St. John's. So the drawdown itself is harmful, and that's the only way they can artificially manage the fishery that's in the Rodman Pool. And so I always tell people, if the pool was functioning like a natural lake, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. But every single day it's in place, it's harming Silver Springs, the Ocklawaha, all the springs underneath it, and the lower St. John's. And when they do this maintenance drawdown to try to dry out the invasive vegetation, to reduce herbicide use, and to restore the oxygen, there's significant harm to the lower St. John's. And so that's all the really bad side. The good side of a drawdown is it gives us more data. The Water Management District and the state agencies, they have 20 years worth of data they've collected regarding the restored water flow and spring flow. It also gives us an insight to some of the springs popping back up. Cannon Spring starts to blue and clear up where you can actually go and dive. Tobacco Patch Springs, you can see other spring flows. So it gives everyone a glimpse into what restoration could look like. It gives really data. So we have hard numbers. They're scientifically collected that show what restoration could look like. So there's good and there's bad to a drawdown. Sadly, the drawdown has been postponed one more year. It was supposed to be drawn down based on their maintenance schedule last year. It was postponed to this year, and now they postponed it once more. The reason being is high waters in the St. John's. They're concerned about the perception or concern of additional water going in. But the water actually helps clear up the St. John. So that's another discussion for debate, but it has been delayed and they anticipate that it will start in late 2025, but that remains to be seen.
Thanks, Lisa. That's so important. So you mentioned that there's some maintenance that needs to happen when drawdowns occur, especially like we said, this is a high hazard dam. So Jessica, can you fill us in? Are there any dam safety concerns now that the drawdown has been postponed? Do you have concerns about that maintenance not occurring?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I actually, last year when the drawdown was supposed to occur, I contacted the DEP from my town email address. At that point, I was not the mayor, but I was still very concerned, as you know, the bombing incident had recently happened, and I asked about that. And so this year, when there was kind of I was very excited that the drawdown was going to occur. I knew that the dam safety, there would be some maintenance work done, and they could actually see some conditions that they can't normally see visually. So when I kind of got the rumor that it was paused briefly, and there was high water, and there indeed was high water in Welaka. It was just after Milton, basically. It wasn't to the degree you saw in those photos. It had mostly come down, but it was still very high. It still is high to this point. So I did email the DEP again, and they called me back, and they said, yes, it has been canceled due to the high water. And I did bring up the concern about the inspections, and they said, well, we're still going to try to do the inspections, and we've done some of the inspections, but it kind of leaves it out in the open that, their very own report says that they're going to use the drawdown period to do these inspections. And a lot of these inspections apparently need to be done when there's actually more visibility and not so much debris against the gates and things like that. So I have asked for a report of those inspections. I have asked for something written up that they can provide to me, but that they said that would take a little bit of time. So I'm still waiting for that, but absolutely, it's one more year that I'm feeling like that we are, I think the uncertainty of knowing the actual condition is probably, if we knew the condition was terrible, then maybe they would make the effort to repair, or they would make a decision. But at this point, we still don't know the condition, and that uncertainty, leads us down another season of potential impacts of high water and hurricanes and things like that. And, it's going to be another long year waiting to see what the condition of the dam actually is. And we don't even know if it will indeed happen in 2025. So there's that as well. So yes, very concerning to me.
Yeah, I could see that, especially with the great risk to your town and your residents. So I share that concern. Ryan, can you tell us, I know you've experienced a drawdown before, kind of switching back to what are the things that you like to do during a drawdown? What are the, you have your list of items, it's a drawdown. What do you have to get out there and see?
Well, I think primarily is the springs is something that you definitely would want to see when you're out there. That's usually the biggest draw. One thing I'd like to go back and say is if anybody's concerned about being a taxpayer, if there was a restoration, you wouldn't have the dam maintenance costs or the herbicides that need to be sprayed. So the funds that would go into that, the environmental harm and everything else, all that would be completely unnecessary going forward, as the river in its natural state will regulate. So that is, there's significant tax savings with restoration. All right. But yes, primarily springs is, I think, one of the largest draws. Also because you have a very narrow amount of time, usually about 90 days to enjoy them. And then before, the drawdown's over and they start refilling the reservoir. But you're also going to see, unfortunately, some of the devastation that occurred in its construction as well. I don't know if anybody ever wants to look, but if you go on like YouTube and look up Crawler Crusher, they had this massive tank that they built just to crush down the entire forest that was there. And it caused a lot of difficulty in it. But some of those trees still, I've seen them have to take a crane and haul them away from the dam. So that's over 50 years ago. And some of that damage that you are able to see during a drawdown is an issue. So yeah, there's some nice things to see the springs, and also you see the environmental consequences of having the reservoir as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important to highlight that.
Yeah,
Go
and I
ahead,
would just
Lisa,
add,
please.
and you can see that glimpse of what it could be with restoration. And I think that's just so important. It just gives us insight to what could be.
And I would personally love, on a personal note,
Absolutely.
other than Dan's safety, personally, I would love to be able to, take a boat from Welaka. I mean, that is a direct route right to Silver River and everything. It would be amazing. But, right now the forefront for me is, of course, as the mayor, the safety of the dam and of the residents.
And I'm primarily a paddler, so I don't use motorcraft very often, but that is a great point. You want to go from the St. John's all the way up to the beautiful Silver River and see the beautiful Ocklawaha along the way. You would have that opportunity. Unfortunately, currently now it does not exist.
Jessica, there may be an argument for you needing to be out there in nature more than any of us with the current stressors. So those are such great points, and I think all of us get so excited when we think about restoration, what it could be. I know that I have seen those pictures and videos of the crusher, and I'm sure that is what inspired so many people to speak out against this when it was happening. That visual is really powerful, and I think that's part of the drawdown too, is that visual is really powerful. It really helps people understand what was lost here, what.
And Casey, we have a little bit of a delay.
Gain for restoration.
I think you're back. We had a little bit of delay.
You had a great. Okay, you had a great point with the taxpayer money, with what could be and what we could.
I could just jump into kind of to piggyback on the taxpayer side. The state of Florida has spent millions of dollars trying to restore the lower St. John's, and this is the most significant project. Not only is it the largest springs restoration project, but it's also the most important project we can do to revitalize the lower St. John's River. When this dam was severed, robbing the lower St. John's of nearly 150 million gallons of fresh water every day, that's had significant impact. And that's the most obvious one. But what we're seeing is with saltwater intrusion and higher, darker water in the St. John's, we've lost about 90% of the eelgrass. And that submerged eelgrass, that is critical bass habitat that put Putnam County and St. John's and Clay County on the map for the bass capital of the world. Now we've lost about 90% of that grass. If we don't bring that eelgrass back, not only does that hurt our fisheries from a recreational standpoint, it hurts these communities that really depend on that bass fishing recreational tourism. And so it's really important we get that boost back. By just reuniting the system and breaching the dam, you get 150 million gallons of water every day that's cooler, it's clearer, and so it can help offset that dark water, offset saltwater intrusion. It can bring back our eelgrass and really restore those fisheries that are there, as well as bring back the historic fish. So it's the most cost beneficial thing we can do to bring back the lower St. John's, not to mention it'll offset those toxic blue-green algae blooms that keep us off our river. So it's another tax-paying savings, but also helps us get the river's estuary back to the most productive estuary it can be.
It sounds like it would be a great investment, to shift that from pesticides and herbicides, herbicides and drawdown activities and maintenance back to, letting nature do what it does best, and then focusing on getting access and some wonderful other assets there. So, Ryan, I know you have a platform that you use to show folks what is out in the area. Can you tell us a little bit about how you use your platform to encourage advocacy and encourage this type of people speaking out to get the environmental benefits that we all would appreciate?
Yeah, sure. My ultimate goal is to show how amazing Florida is, and particularly around this area. it's once people see that, I hope they experience it for themselves and then appreciate it and ultimately will advocate for it. I tell you, anybody can do it if they have if they have any kind of platform. There doesn't have to particularly be social media, but if someone, I got my start, especially when it came to the Reunite the Rivers Coalition, is I went to one of their outreach events and they gave me a lot of information that really opened my eyes to it. So I just took what I was already doing, which is enjoying recreating, and then started just showing, hey, this is important. This is why this is like the vegetation that had been sprayed. I did not want to get in that water with that herbicide. I was like, man, this is the herbicide had just recently been sprayed, and you can look up online what those ingredients are and how harmful they are. So I guess taking things like that and showing it out there and having a passion for it, basically anyone can do that and seek to make a difference. But I think it just comes down to information, like passion, and then doing what you already are comfortable with. That's one way that is like a great way to get some of this information out there and showcase why these are important.
Well, you're very humble. You do a wonderful job of not only showing the outdoors and these wonderful places in Florida, but telling people how they can make a difference. So we certainly appreciate that and keep it up. And hopefully we have more people talking about this. Lisa, can you tell us some additional ways that the public can get involved and advocate for restoration?
Absolutely. The best way is get out on the water, get out and go visit Welaka, visit Palatka, go out and understand all the connectivity in Marion County, and really understand the benefits. If you live in the downstream along the St. Johns, understand what benefits to the lower St. Johns. We have those available at our website at stjohnsriverkeeper.org, or as well as at reunititherivers.com. We all obviously like to talk about this and meet with people, whether it's on the river or at different forums. We go to dock parties, we go to coffee shops, we love to go to breweries. Any place we can talk about these opportunities, and as Ryan said, not only experience it but learn about it and learn about what is available. Let your local officials know that it's important. Let your state officials know it's important, but really understanding that this is an opportunity to have one of the most significant restoration projects, whether you're a springs lover, a fisherman, the lower St. Johns, the upper Ocklawaha, it's all connected. And so I would say just understand the benefits and tell your neighbor, tell your elected officials, and let's get out on the water together.
And Lisa, I forgot to mention that, but yes, that advocacy to our elected officials. If you look at the roadblock for removing the dam, it hasn't been the agency. The agencies have already done their environmental impact studies and everything else, signed off on it. So there's all the green lights you could possibly want to go ahead and get this done. The balking has come from our elected officials, and for the last 20 years, or more than that, I should say. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you all so much. I know we're getting some really amazing engagement from our live stream viewers, and they've asked some wonderful questions. So I'd like to take a few questions. If we can't get to all of these awesome questions, we will share how you can get in touch with everyone at the end of the live stream. So let's see. Our first question. What is, and we kind of went up, we kind of went into this. What's the primary obstacle to undoing this dam? Thank you for your question. That was a YouTube viewer, Irma. Thank you so much. What's the holdup on restoration?
I think what's been the holdup and is that we've looked at it from the wrong scale. The most of the political, and it is politics, as Ryan mentioned, but it's been mostly focusing on Rodman Pool versus Springs, and looking at those two areas. And so I think if we look back and understand the pros and the cons of restoration or the status quo from a regional perspective about connecting all of these watersheds, the harm it's doing to the lower St. John's, to Silver Spring, seeing how it can bring back the fisheries. I think looking at it from the ecosystem scale that it is what's important, and just really focusing and honing in just on pools versus springs has been the holdup, and that's really led to a political deadlock. And so I think that's what I see changing, and just from conversations we're having with people at Putnam County and Marion, as well as downstream and upstream, that just looking at it from a larger scale of those benefits is moving the needle towards restoration.
Can I add to that as well? There is a lot of misconception, at least in our area, and I think public opinion is shifting, but there's a huge misconception that the dam is actually offering flood control for Welaka. I mean, in my area, that's a huge misconception, that they think that dam is actually protecting them from the waters, which I've done some research. I know that the exact opposite is true. The dam is causing the additional risk. The additional floodplain that would be opened up would be huge. So when I have conversations with people, it's like, the dam is not protecting you from floodwaters. The dam is actually making you more at risk. So, I think that could be part of the holdup too, is the public perception that is the case.
Absolutely. Those are great points. All right, we're going to take some more questions. We have a great question from Dale on YouTube. Thank you, Dale. What is the difference between a drawdown and breaching of the dam? What's the distinction between those two?
Sure, I'll jump in. Dale, the drawdown, it's a maintenance drawdown that they've been doing, for more than 20 years. I think it's been about 50 years. They've been doing it every 3 years. It's just temporary. They do it. They draw down the pool from 19 feet down to 11 feet. And so that allows for all the invasive plants and all the issues to clean out the pool. And then they fill it back up. By breaching it, that's actually breaching it and restoring the natural flow and the natural level all the way down to to historic conditions of the Ocklawaha River. And so it wouldn't be filled back up. So the pool would actually go away. It would return to forested wetlands, and the river channel would start to flow naturally again. And so those are the two differences.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, that's such an important distinction. We have a couple other questions. We had some folks asking, I know not everyone is local to this area, so revisiting that map now that we've talked about the dam and where Welaka is in relation to where the dam is, what restoration would do and would look like. If we could have, this map put up, and would anyone be willing to orient folks to where the dam is? And I know you can see Welaka on there, on the St. John's River. And I can do my best. So the big pool of water there, that is the Rodman pool. You can kind of see a line going diagonal. That would be the dam. And then you can see where that forested wetland, that floodplain would be, and that little tiny line is the current waterway there. So again, the most important thing for me was getting out there, getting onto the river and seeing all this firsthand. Lisa, can you add a little flavor to that?
Absolutely. So where you see the Ocklawaha meeting the St. John's River, just there southwest of Welaka, if you go downstream or if you go north, since the St. John's River runs north, that would run north through Palatka, Green Cove Springs, all the way to Jacksonville. If you go south or upstream on the St. John's River, you would go right into Lake George. So this little part of the map is just southeast of Palatka.
Wonderful, thank you. And again, we really encourage folks to get up to the area. go visit those local businesses and then get out on the river. There's some wonderful tour guides that we'll talk a little bit more about at the end, but there's some wonderful guides that can take you out there and not only show you the environment there, but they can tell you about the history and the vegetation and the wildlife that's there as well. And if you're like Ryan, you can certainly paddle it.
I want to be like Ryan.
And during a drawdown, you can even hike it. So, wait for that opportunity next. All right, we'll continue on with some questions. Let's see. Our next question from Irma. Again, thank you, Irma. How can we, the Florida public, influence legislators and the best way to get this done? So these are really important. I can feel the energy from the crowd just saying, like, how can we do this? What can we do? How can we help?
Yeah. I would just say, let your local elected officials know, your state representatives, how important this restoration project is. Luckily, there is an organization called the Great Florida Riverways Trust that's working with legislators as well, and really focusing on a complete package, not just focusing on restoration, but also revitalization and investment in these communities along the banks of the Great Florida Riverway, which is the Ocklawaha, Silver Springs, and the St. Johns. So stay tuned. You'll see some activity, but really focus on understanding the benefits and letting your local elected officials know how important this is to Florida.
And one thing a question that or a comment that I got when I visited one of my elected officials and was talking with a staffer was that, that the reservoir is actually its own ecosystem now. So we may not want to disturb this. And if we looked at some of the things that we've touched on, such as disrupted fish migrating patterns, the having to spray herbicides on the vegetation, the concerns about communities, downriver from the dam, all these things are some things that would be self-managing if the reservoir was removed. And without those fish migrating patterns and the manatees being able to move freely about the riverway up around where this, the Silver River and Silver Springs, it's impacting those ecosystems as well. So the reservoir in itself is not a self-regulating, viable ecosystem. It just kind of goes back to a time in the 60s where we had some insanely crazy development projects around the state, and we thought, hey, if the more development of these natural areas, the better. We can do it better. But time has shown that is simply not true. If you do have an opportunity where there's something specific, like if there was a bill created to remove restore the Ocklawaha, then at that point, that is when we would need everyone to get involved and contact their elected official. So letting them know now that it's important is great. If you ever get that opportunity where there's something on the move in the legislature, that is also a critical opportunity, kind of like what we saw with our state park development plans. When everybody jumped on it at once, it went away. We can do the same in a positive direction.
Absolutely. I would just add there at reunitetheriver.com, reunitetherivers.com, there is a frequently asked questions that a lot of the things we talked about today, as well as you can sign up for alerts for more information. So just a tip to stay involved and to understand just the magnitude of benefits, and that it's not an ecosystem. Rodman's artificially managed, and it's hurting Silver Springs and the St. Johns River, which is, again, one of the reasons why Putnam is the bass fishing capital of the world.
Yeah. So our last question, I know we're getting close on time. And so very quickly, what will happen to fishing opportunities? We just talked about that, especially for those who currently fish and rely on the Rodman pool and the reservoir.
Yeah, so luckily that there are more than 250 lakes that are 10 acres or more in Putnam County. And so if you are a lake fisherman, there are fantastic lakes, including Lake George and Crescent Lake, which are prize trophy bass fisheries which is part of the bass fishing circuit. So we have lakes that are there. So you have that lake fishing opportunity, and then you're going to have more bank fishing. So if you don't have a boat and you're doing more, you like to fish off the bank, you have more bank fishing. There'll be more fishing opportunities, and that's part of the discussion on investing in more opportunities so everyone has access. In addition, it's going to improve the river fishing. It's going to improve fish habitat. It's going to bring back historic fish populations of striped bass and American shad, American eel. And so you won't have that pool in its intact, but you're going to have more diversity and more opportunities to fish. And so we believe that, like working together and investing in the community, it's going to enhance and increase the amount of fishing opportunities, as well as opportunities for guides for whatever type of fishing you prefer, whether it's river fishing, bank fishing, or lake fishing. And the good news too, other rivers that have been restored and dams removed, those migratory fish, they come back almost immediately. And so that's something you're going to see immediately after the breach happens, as well as the springs flowing, the water's clearing up. And so there's immediate benefits as well as long-term.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And I know after fishing, the best thing is going into town, grabbing a beer and some food. So the town of Welaka will be there for you, along with all the other wonderful towns that are along the Great Florida Riverway. I just want to thank all of you so much for being here, for answering questions, for sharing your knowledge. You're so knowledgeable, and I really couldn't thank you enough. This is a statewide issue, so sharing this throughout the state is really important, and I hope you brought some new information and a new environmental issue for everyone to get involved in. So no matter where you are in the state, you can certainly reach out to your local representatives and let them know that this is important to you, along with other environmental protection and restoration. So just in case somebody had a question, I want to just ask each of our panelists, how can folks get in touch with you? Lisa, I'll start with you. How should people find you and get more information?
Sure, you can find us on social media as well as at stjohnsriverkeeper.org. And I'd love to get out on the water with you.
Wonderful. Ryan, how can folks follow you?
I'm most active on Instagram as far as the Florida Excursionist. You can look me up with your favorite search engine, or on the Florida Madcaps podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. I can be contacted there as well.
Great. And Jessica, how can folks contact you? How can they let you know how much they appreciate your work?
They can contact me at my town email address. It's jfinch@welaka-fl.gov, and that'll come straight to me, and I'll be able to answer it very quickly. I try to stay right on top of that.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. You can stay tuned to everything that the Florida Wildlife Federation is doing and advocating for by joining our newsletter. And we also have our next live stream coming up on December 19th. That is going to be Conservation Through the Arts. And I know I am looking forward to that one. We hope that you will tune in with us again, and we hope that you will follow along and join our newsletter to stay up to date on all of the ways that we can all protect Florida's land, water, and wildlife. And then finally, please get out there, explore the river. You can find some resources for that on our website, along with all of our wonderful panelists' suggestions as well. So get out there, enjoy the river, see what is at stake, and see what restoration can do for the Great Florida Riverway.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.